Hello and welcome back to the Cave Escape Podcast. I'm Ashton Goolsby.
And I'm Caleb Groves.
And we are back this week to talk about Flannery O'Connor, specifically her short story, Parker's Back.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not familiar with Flannery O'Connor, she is an author from Georgia. I don't remember specifically where in Georgia. Do you remember which city she was in? He's going to grab the book and see if it's on the back.
I bet you it is. Savannah, Georgia.
Gotcha. So she is from
1925 is when she was born.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure she was alive and writing well after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she lived in Savannah, Georgia, born and raised, died there. She died actually pretty early. I don't remember how old she was. I think she was in her 50s. But she died from lupus. So she never married. She lived. She didn't live alone. I don't remember who she lived with. It sounds like we didn't research anything at all. This is about the story, not about Flannery O'Connor. We're just giving some context for where the story came from.
Right.
But so she lived and wrote in Georgia. So a lot of her stories take place in the South and around the 50s. Not all of them are always politically correct, as you might gather from somebody in the South at that time. So if that's a thing that bothers you, read with discretion, or maybe don't read them at all.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't read them, you're missing out. They're
That's
pretty
true.
good. So she was, another thing we should mention, she was Roman Catholic.
Yep.
So contrary actually to most people in the South who were probably Baptist or Methodist or Church of Christ or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
she was almost a lone Roman Catholic in the South. And you can see some of that in her stories. Although a lot of times she'll write them from the perspective of a Methodist or a Baptist or something.
Yeah. Isn't that kind of mostly what I feel like most of her stories are? Like they're either Methodist or Baptist or something.
Yeah.
She doesn't really write to me about Roman Catholics, right?
Not often.
I haven't read all of them.
I'm trying to think. We did a class in college on them with we had Dr. Jonathan Rogers who was teaching that one. He's written a book on Flannery O'Connor that I've read part of it. It's pretty good, but he loves Flannery O'Connor, and so he had the opportunity to do an 8-week course where we read a bunch of her stories, and this was one of them, the one we're going to talk about. But
yeah, we tried to get him on for this episode, but he was busy this weekend.
Yeah,
that's not true.
I was going to say, did we actually try that?
No, we did not.
We had mentioned doing it. I was like, did you reach out to him? I didn't. Anyway, maybe we'll read another one at some point and see if he can come with us, because he'd be way better at this than we are.
Yeah.
But anyway, Flannery O'Connor, you can see some of her Catholicism come in every now and then, just with the way she tells some of it. And you're like, clearly this is not a Methodist understanding of the symbolism of this.
Yeah.
So her stories, she got a bad rap, and still does a lot of times, they're very dark, and they tend to be kind of gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
And so she got a lot of backlash on that. For why are your stories so dark and gruesome? Even for a Christian lady, why would you write a story like this? And something that I remember we talked about multiple times with Dr. Rogers, a quote that he had from her I think it's in his book, was she talked about the idea of grace.
Mm-hmm.
And she said in all of her stories, she offers the characters grace at somewhere along the way, and at the end they either accept the grace or they reject it. So she's telling stories about horrible people in horrible situations, and she does not gloss over the details of how horrible these people are and how horrible their situations and their lives are. But at some point in the story, she offers them grace, and they can either accept it or they can reject it.
Right.
So I guess as we talk about this story, that'd be one thing to look at.
Yeah.
Where's grace offered to whom, and how do they respond to it?
Yeah, that's a good framework. And so if you haven't read the book, we recommend reading the story. Not book. It's a short story. It's only like 20 pages.
It's not very long. You can find compilations of her short stories at a lot of people sell them. Especially if you're in the South and you go in some corner bookstore somewhere, I guarantee they probably have a copy of her stuff tucked away somewhere.
Yeah.
I've been surprised at the places that do have it.
Yeah. But you should definitely read the story, I think, before listening to this. Because it kind of, knowing how the story goes kind of takes away a lot of the power of the story.
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
Yeah, because that's what happened to me. I was supposed to read this for a class, and then I didn't read it, and then we talked about it, and then I heard the whole thing. And it was powerful when we talked about it, but then when I actually went and read the whole thing, I knew how it ended, and so it lost a lot of the impact, which is really a lot of her stories actually are like that.
Yeah.
Because they always kind of have some kind of
twist,
gut-wrenching ending at the end.
Yeah, and I'll also throw out, like, if you can't get the book or if you just don't want to sit down and read that much, I did listen to it on Audible this time because somebody couldn't find their copy of the book and stole my copy when I was going to read it.
You said I could read it.
Well, let's say you can find a compilation of all of her short stories on Audible for, it's like $1 credit, and you can listen to it there. It was only about, I think it was like 25 minutes or something to listen to. It wasn't very long to listen to. But it's one of those, like, you listen to it, and I guess we'll get into it here in a second, but it's one of those you listen to, and to me, this was one, he's such a not likable character, and it's so just gritty and kind of gross, and you don't really like anybody in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't want to spoil the end, but the end, I was just like, I felt like I was right there with him at the end.
Do we want to assume the people have read it?
I would say if you haven't read it, go pause right here. Go pause and go and read it or listen to it and then come back. Because if you listen past this point much farther, the ending's going to be spoiled for you. And this is one of my favorite ones that she wrote. Yep. I'm not 100% sure why I can't articulate it perfectly, but the end, I love the end. And if you have it spoiled, it ruins the effect of the ending.
Yeah.
So I would go...
So please don't listen to this without reading it first.
Hopefully we haven't spoiled it already.
Right. So from here on out, I think we can talk about the whole story.
Yes,
without having to worry about spoiling the ending.
We gave you multiple disclaimers. Proceed at your own risk. Beat on your own head. So I guess, should we jump into the story?
Yes.
So the story starts with... it does not give his name at the beginning, does it? Does it just call him...
No, it doesn't actually.
Call him Parker? You're the one with the written version.
Parker's wife is the first couple words.
Yeah, so it just starts off referring to him as Parker. And so the first context we get is him now with his wife. Mm-hmm. And he is not at all happy with his current situation. But he can't bring himself to leave either, is the crazy thing.
Yeah. And that was... The interesting thing is that, to me, was the way that it started with... He's sitting there and he's like thinking about how unhappy he is with his wife. And then it kind of jumps back in time, and then it's like, this is where he met his wife. And then from there, then it was like back in time to like when he was 15 and he first saw a tattoo, and then he was like, holy cow, I want to get a tattoo. And then it goes from there and then tells his whole story up through when he meets his wife, and then when they get married, and just tells the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting way of like opening, I thought.
Yeah, and the other thing that it caught me off guard, I remember the first time I read it, and even kind of again today, it kind of hit me as odd. You start off, and he's clearly not happy, and she's not really happy either. She doesn't really like him. She thinks he's a deadbeat loser, kind of ugly. He thinks she's ugly. He says he didn't like ugly girls, and she was also pregnant, which made it even worse. He didn't like pregnant women most of all, which... She's pregnant by his fault.
Right.
But you keep, when they do a flashback, you assume, well, maybe they had a happier time. Right. They never had a happier time.
He dislikes her from like the moment that he meets her, and then he just is kind of inexplicably attracted to her.
And you can't, like, you don't like him, but it's not, you can't blame him for not liking her either. They're both horrible people.
Yeah.
And so, like, you just keep thinking as it goes back, maybe it'll get better. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe we'll find some ray of hope. The only ray of hope that's in there, the only thing that he ever seems to have cared about and liked is that guy with the tattoos he saw at the circus.
Yeah.
That to him was just
like a transcendent experience almost.
I think it was intended to be a transcendent experience of some kind.
Yeah.
I guess we can think about what that might have been.
Mm-hmm.
I guess as we keep going with tattoos.
Yeah. So yeah, I actually want to talk to you about that part specifically because that was one of the first things that stood out to me. I wrote down the line that was there. It said he was a boy whose mouth was habitually hung open. Whose mouth habitually hung open. Yeah. So it talked about he went to the circus and he saw this guy wearing just like spandex around his groin area, and his whole entire body was covered in tattoos. And as soon as he saw him, he was just like in awe of this man. And he stood there just like looking at where the guy stood. He wasn't even looking at the guy anymore, but he was just kind of like in a trance looking at where he was standing until everybody had left the tent and he was just by himself standing there.
Yeah. Even the guy has left the tent and he's still standing there just thinking about how awesome it was. Because he saw it. The guy had different tattoos all over his body, but when Parker looked at it, he's envisioning it. He sees it from across the tent as one big mass of just beautiful color across the guy's body. So he sees it as this unified whole, and it's beautiful and it works together and all this stuff. And I thought it was interesting that, and he tries to replicate it himself, and he's never happy with it because it just seems so just random and disjoined.
Yeah,
he just thinks
it's every time he gets a new tattoo, he's happy about it for like a month, and then he gets tired of it and he wants a new one, and so then he just he's just randomly sticking them on there, and it even says he doesn't care what it's about. He doesn't care about the content. He just wants a tattoo on there. Yeah, to fill in the extra space and try and make him happy.
Which I think is like a picture of his life. He just doesn't care about anything, and he's just so like it says he'll work somewhere until he gets tired of it, and then he quits and he moves and he finds something completely different to do. Yep. He has no stability in his life. Everything is just random, and so just like he wants this unified picture that he saw, but he can't actually get at it. Yeah. And the best he's trying to do it the best he can think of to do it, and it just comes out as this random hodgepodge, and it looks like garbage. And it's weird. Like he keeps wanting to do more, and the more he does, the more he hates it, and the more unhappy he becomes. But it's the only thing he knows that can make him happy. Right.
But so I wanted to ask you because the first thing, for some reason, it really stuck out to me when it said he was a boy whose mouth habitually hung open, and I initially read that as like I think I may have been reading into it a little bit too much, but I initially read that as like him being a boy who was like always in awe of things. But it goes on later to say that was like the only time that he ever had that feeling. Yeah. And so I guess that's incorrect. But then also it goes down when he was in the Navy, and it said after a month or two in the Navy, his mouth ceased to hang open. And then it comes back again later, actually talking about the first time he met his future wife, Sarah Ruth, when his car breaks down and he's standing out there and they talk for a little bit. She goes back inside, and then it says Parker remained for almost 5 minutes looking agape at the dark door she had entered. And so it's kind of like similar thing. He's just kind of standing there agape with his mouth open. Yeah, I didn't notice that part. And he's looking at the dark door that she entered. So he's also again not looking at her. He's looking at where she was. Yeah. And so that just kind of was like an interesting thing that was brought back multiple times, and I don't really know what it means.
Funnily enough, when I heard the part of his mouth habitually hung open, I thought of Bubba from Forrest Gump.
I still haven't seen that.
Oh, you haven't seen that? Well, if you've seen Forrest Gump, when he goes to Vietnam, he meets this other guy from Alabama. His name's Bubba, and he walks around with his mouth kind of open. And the first thing Lieutenant Dan tells him, he says, "You better close your mouth. You're gonna catch flies or mosquitoes or something." And he closes he kind of bites his lip to hold it in. But that's when they get deployed to Vietnam. Yeah. So that's what I thought of. But typically, like if you see somebody, I mean, we're back to being around kids a lot now. Yep. I mean, if a kid's not paying attention, they kind of sit there leaning on their hand with their mouth kind of hanging open. That's kind of what I was thinking more. Not like he's in awe, just he's checked out. He's not paying attention to anything.
Okay, yeah, that actually makes a little more sense.
And then to be in the Navy, you have to get whipped into some kind of discipline. Right. So I was thinking there was something about the Navy that kind of started whipping him into shape. And so his life changed. He got some discipline in him, and then he comes out and he just kind of starts losing it.
Interesting.
Because he's dishonorably discharged.
Yeah, right. Because the reason it made me think that he wondered at things was that it was in the context of the tattoo experience. And so I want to say it came right after that.
Yeah, it was right about that time it noted.
Yeah, it was either right before or right after. I'm pretty sure it was right after. And so it was like he did this thing, like this thing happened to him, and he was just in awe of this thing that he had seen.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says his mouth habitually hung open, which to be like he was a guy who was just kind of always checked out. I guess maybe could be used to emphasize the fact that this was a big deal that he had that experience.
I was wondering if maybe it was contrasting. He was the kid who just walked around usually like looking kind of dumb with his mouth just kind of hung open. But this time there was maybe a reason for it. Like he was habitually a kid who walked around with this, but this time there was a different reason for his mouth to be hung open. Because he was kind of agape at what he'd seen.
Yeah, so what it says, so this is what it says. Parker was filled with emotion, lifted up as some people are when the flag passes. He was a boy whose mouth habitually hung open. He was heavy and earnest, as ordinary as a loaf of bread. When the show was over, he had remained standing on the bench staring where the tattooed man had been until the tent was almost empty.
Yeah, I still kind of read that as he was just a kid who walked around kind of clueless, but this time he's found something that's actually made him pause. So I read it more as he just kind of did this habitually, but this time there was a reason to make it even more pronounced.
Right. Yeah. So what's actually super interesting that I just remembered is the paragraph right after that. It says, Parker had never before felt the least motion of wonder in himself. Until he saw the man at the fair, it did not enter his head that there was anything out of the ordinary about the fact that he existed. Even then, it did not enter his head, but a peculiar unease settled on him. It was as if a blind boy had been turned so gently in a different direction that he did not know his destination had changed. So it doesn't even... It kind of seems to imply that he felt wonder in that moment, but it also kind of feels like not even really. Like he just kind of had something weird happen and now he kind of felt weird.
Yeah. It's like
but nothing really out of the ordinary. It was like an existential crisis, but like masked in his head.
I don't know if he actually fully realized what had happened in his head.
Yeah.
He's had something, he's half conscious that something's happened. And he knows enough it's about the tattoos. There's something about that he wants.
Mm-hmm.
He just doesn't know what it is.
Right.
And he's started... I think that's part of why he just starts randomly buying tattoos. He doesn't know what he wants. Yeah. But he knows it's something there, and he thinks that he can accomplish it by just grabbing whatever's there, and maybe something will end up right.
Mm-hmm.
I also love the part where it says that his mom wouldn't pay for any except for her name.
Right.
But nobody had to know that that was her name.
Right. He's like, Betty Jean could be anybody.
Yeah. So he runs off. He joins the Navy, and then he goes back home without permission, gets caught, gets put in prison, and then dishonorably discharged.
Yep.
And then he just kind of floats around getting just various jobs, whatever. And it says at the time he happened to just be selling apples.
Right.
And he would buy them. What was it for? Like, he would buy them for so much.
He would buy them by the bushel,
yeah.
And then he would sell them for that much for the pound.
Yeah, so he's way up charging them all these apples. And he happens to come by this house, and I love that he knows she's watching him. He didn't know where she is, but he gets the sense that the girl's watching him.
Mm-hmm.
And his first reaction, like he acts like he's hurt his hand, even though he hasn't hurt his hand, just to get the attention.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's angry when she gives him attention because it's not the attention he wanted.
Right.
So he immediately like blasphemes as out GD.
Mm-hmm.
And she shows up and smacks him across the face.
Yeah.
And then he gets mad at her, and he keeps hold on to the story that he's hurt his hand, even though he clearly has not hurt his hand at all.
Yeah.
So his relationship with her begins just off of a lie.
Mm-hmm.
But then also she doesn't ever call him out on the fact that he didn't actually hurt his hand, really.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
I think she may allude to something about it, but she checks his hand out and doesn't really say anything to him about it.
Mm-hmm. Because then she starts looking at his tattoos.
Yeah.
Or he starts commenting on his tattoos. And the whole time he's just kind of like trying to like flirt with her and kind of seduce her, I guess.
Yeah.
Really?
But he doesn't know why.
Right. It's just because that's what he does.
Yeah, he hates her, especially because he finds he says she's ugly, and she's the kind that you would have to marry. And he's like, I would hate to ever be tied down to anybody, so I hate her more for that. And she's overtly religious in everything that she says. Everything is about that's wrong. You shouldn't do that. Well, God condemns people who do that. The Bible says da 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 about all these things.
Yep.
And he hates people like that too. So there's nothing about her that he should like. He even admits to himself, I hate her. I'm never coming back here again. And I love the humor of like, he decided he was never coming back there again. He hated her and he never wanted to see her again. He was going to go off and never come back. And then immediately next paragraph says, so anyway, the next morning he came back with a bunch of apples.
Yep.
You're like, dude, what the heck?
And it said like, cause he couldn't stand to let a woman get the best of him or something like that.
I think that's what she said.
Yeah.
But it's basically just his pride. He just doesn't want to back down from it and say that she got the best of him. And so,
because he's always been able to get girls.
Yeah, he can't he can't understand why he can't get this one.
Yeah.
And he keeps saying, why do I even want her? I hate everything about her. I don't even want her. But it's the very fact that he knows that he couldn't that he then decides to, and he finds himself in like just seeming. There's no segue into it. It's almost like we're with him just discovering, and suddenly he's married to her, and suddenly she's pregnant.
And he was like, it says like what, like the end of the paragraph is like, and he like decided right then and there that he was not going to have anything to do with her anymore. And the very next sentence at the beginning of the next paragraph is, they got married on like at this place.
Yeah. It was like an immediate jump. He goes, he decided then there he was leaving her and never coming back. They got married in the courthouse. And you're like,
yeah.
Huh?
Very jarring.
There's no like even in between of where he changes his mind. It's just we jump presumably weeks or months and suddenly they're married.
Right.
And it's a flashback.
So what do you think that tells us about his character specifically in like how the story ends and like kind of what I don't really want to say the point of the story because it doesn't necessarily have to be a point, but like why is the way that she is and his attraction to her and the weird jarringness of their relationship matter to the story?
I think it's really interesting when you get to the end because she seems, again jumping to the end a little bit, she seems like a very pious, upstanding, religious person just by the way she talks. But I at least kept getting this vibe that she was not really. She preaches one thing, but it doesn't really seem like Christianity.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is that really draws him to her, other than the fact that like he just knows that he can't actually have her any other way, and he's just set on, well, I'm not going to let somebody get the best of me. But in the end, I feel like she doesn't actually understand the gospel, but I think he's starting to.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like maybe there was something about it that he secretly longed for that he didn't even realize. And I think I wonder if he saw it in her, and then he was mentally convinced he hated it, and then is just kind of drawn to it for some reason he can't explain until eventually it's kind of started to be revealed to him why.
Yeah. Can we just go ahead and talk about the end since we're starting to get close to the end?
Yeah. I guess we should also like mention like why he got the tattoo in the first place.
The back tattoo, the Jesus tattoo.
Because he left his back blank.
Right.
Yeah, I guess you want to explain that.
Okay, yeah. So he left his back blank because he was like, I can't see tattoos on my back, so not gonna put any there because that would be dumb and pointless. And so he's like been putting tattoos everywhere but his back, and he finally just like fills up his whole body, and he doesn't have anywhere else to put it. And then he's working. He's like a farmhand for this old lady, and he's daydreaming about something. Actually, that was kind of a significant part.
Yeah. And then the tree grabs at him while he's driving this. He's baling hay with this tractor. I love that it doesn't say he hit the tree. It says the tree grabbed him out. The tree saves his life. He almost crashes the tractor into this tree.
Yo!
And the tree grabs him out, and he's stuck there. And for the rest of the book, he keeps flashing back to the image of it. Talks about the tree pulling him out. I did not catch that. And his shoes are there on the ground on fire. So he's looking at where he should have been. The shoes are where he was supposed to be. His shoes are there in the flames from the destroyed tractor. The tree, he says the tree grabbed him and threw him out of the tractor. So in a
That
sense,
is so crazy.
he's saved, I guess you could say, like by the cross.
Yeah, because the tree is symbolizes the cross.
But then from that moment on, it's almost like he's become aware of something else.
Yeah.
But it's only the second time in his life. The first time was the tattoos, and now again he's got something that he can't.
And that comes back several times. The image of the tree, because at some point later, then he flashes back to the blazing tree and his shoes that are on fire.
Yeah, and it refers to again how the tree was grabbing at him.
Yeah.
So there's something about this tree that it keeps gnawing at his mind. It's grabbing at him the whole time. And then he immediately goes off because then he knows I know what I need to do.
Yep.
I know what I need to do. He goes and he says, he goes to the tattoo parlor and he says, I want a picture of God on my back.
Yep.
And the guy's like, you want like a saint? You want somebody from a Bible story? He goes, no, I want a picture of God. He goes, you want Father, Son, or Holy Spirit? He says, I just want God. I want God. He did, and I feel like that's an honest confession on his part. He's coming to this realization that that's what he wants and needs.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way he can rationalize it in his brain is it's a tattoo that I want. I want this tattoo. And this whole process is leading him to realize that's not actually what he means when he says he wants God. He doesn't want a picture on his back.
Right.
He wants something different.
Yeah. But also, other cool thing, just connection that I just made. When he goes to the homeless shelter thing to stay the night, because the tattoos takes 2 days.
Yeah.
So he goes to the parlor, he works on it, and then he goes and he sleeps in the homeless shelter, goes back. And it says the only light was from the phosphorescent cross glowing at the end of the room. The tree reached out to grab him again, then burst into flame. The shoes burned quietly by itself. And the eyes in the book said to him distinctly, go back, and at the same time did not utter a sound.
Yeah.
So I wrote that down because I was like, that feels pretty significant, but I didn't even connect that she's making a connection between the cross and the tree right there. Because it's pretty explicit.
It also mentions the cross hanging at the end of the...
That's what it just... Yeah. The cross down there is glowing, and the very next sentence is the tree reached out to grasp him. So that's super crazy.
Yeah.
But moving on.
He finishes the tattoo, and he's decided he hasn't slept at all the night before, and then he goes there, and when he's done, he won't even look at it.
Yep.
He's too scared to look at it. So he wants to put his shirt on it, and the tattoo artist gets angry with him because he's like, I'm going to spend 2 days on this. You look at it. So he forcibly grabs him, pulls him in front of a mirror, and makes him look at it. And he looks at it and immediately jumps away from the mirror, but it says he can still see the eyes looking at him. There's something about this picture. It's a Byzantine icon of Christ on his back. But when he sees it, there's something about the eyes looking at him. But he says the lids are closed. The lids are closed, yet he feels the eyes penetrating. I missed that. Yeah, I only caught it this time, but he said the lids are closed, but he can feel the eyes looking at him even when he's not in front of the mirror anymore, because he can only see it with a mirror. But
and that's sort of like before he crashes into the tree, and the tree grabs him. It describes the sun as being something, and then he was like, it was almost as if there were 2 suns, and one of them was behind his head. And is if he had eyes in the back of his head, and he was like, he was seeing the sun behind him. Yeah. So that's kind of that. Yeah. I feel like that was kind of similar.
There's something about looking
something
behind
connected.
him.
Yeah, being able to see what's behind him, the sun that's behind him.
Yeah. So he's been gone from home for 2 days on this, and he has this whole interaction at the pool house.
Yep.
Not swimming pool, like a billiard room.
Right.
And then he gets kicked out for causing a fight, but he starts the fight over there asking him if he's got religion. Yeah. And he gets so furiated that no, he has not gotten religion, and he starts fighting a guy, and they throw him out. And so then when he gets home, this is my favorite part when he gets back to the house, because he's been gone for days. He's kind of in this hysteria. He doesn't really know, something's changed, and he doesn't know what it is. And he thinks he just needs to get home and show her the tattoo. Yeah. So he thinks he just needs to get home and show her the tattoo. So he gets to the door, and he knocks on the door, and she says, he tries to open it. It's not locked, but he can tell she's propped a chair or something against it. And she says, who is it? He says, you know who it is. It's me, O.E., open the door. She goes, I don't know an O.E. He goes, yes, you do. It's me. Open the door. It's O.E. She goes, who is it? He said, "It's me, OE." He said, "Who is it?" And finally, I can't remember exactly what it says, but the last time she asks him, it's noticeably something different, as if it was. She said it was like as if it was like the last time. It was asking him more specifically or something.
Oh yeah, she said it like it was like the end.
Yeah,
like the end of the conversation almost.
yeah, and because he goes by his initials. He does not go by his real name. But the last time she asks him, who is it? He says Obadiah.
He whispers it through the keyhole.
Yeah, he whispers it, and the door opens.
Well, he first says Obadiah, and then he says his full name, Obadiah Elihu.
Yeah.
And also, is it right after he names himself? This is the other thing that I wrote down. Then as he stood there, a tree of light burst over the skyline.
Yeah.
A tree of light. Very interesting phrasing. Parker fell back against the door as if he had been pierced by a lance. I think that was right after he said his name.
Yeah.
Was it not?
It is.
Yeah.
So it's like this moment of self-realization. He has to recognize who he truly is to be permitted into the house.
Right.
When he shows up with his fake
you keep
name,
phrasing things in ways that are making me realize all the crazy things in the story.
But it's crazy. And like I said, I don't remember if I said it on here, if I was talking to you beforehand. I had to do some teacher training over this past summer, and I watched a series on stories, and they were talking about Flannery O'Connor, and they talked about this story specifically. And that was one thing he pointed out, which I remember Dr. Rogers pointing out as well, was to get in the house, he has to say his name.
Yeah.
And I don't remember right now what his name, they were talking about what his name, Obadiah Elihu, means. But there is religious significance in what his name means. And the fact that he's ignored it for so long, but he's now, by saying it, he's making a statement about who he is, and he's recognizing by having this name, this is who he is, this is who he's supposed to be. And by saying that, he's then let into the house.
That's so crazy. Because at the same time that happens, then he gets pierced by the lance with the tree of light coming over the horizon with the dawn, which I think also is like he physically, literally is led into the house, but then also in a more, what's the word? Like spiritual sense, like more. I keep imagining like God promised the Israelites physical land, promised land, but also it points towards more heavenly things.
Yeah.
Type of deal. And so like he's actually let into the house, but then he's like kind of being let into the house of heaven, possibly. Or it's at least implying that that's like kind of coming if it's not happening right then.
Yeah. I almost see that as like that's kind of his conversion moment.
Yeah.
He's but I don't think he's quite aware of it yet.
Yeah.
Until the end. But his eyes were opened. He's been looking, and he finally has to. It's almost like he's admitting his guilt. He's put off his old name. He gets a new name, just like you would like your baptism.
Yep.
Traditionally, you would get a new name. It's been his name this whole time, but he acknowledges this is his name, and he's allowed in. But then he gets in the house, and his wife, who's the one who's been preaching the gospel, quote unquote. You can't see air quotes in a audio podcast. His wife beats him out of the house. So he comes in. He thinks she's going to be impressed with it. She just scolds him and yells at him, and he pulls a lamp out to show her his shirt, and she looks at it, and this is the part that I thought was really significant. She looks at it, and she doesn't recognize who it is. And he says, "Well, don't you know who it is?" She goes, "No, I don't know who that is." But she's the one who's the whole time has been professing to know God. And she looks at, and remember, she's Roman Catholic. So, and she was also apparently, we don't have time to go into it, but she was apparently also very interested in Eastern Orthodox.
Flannery O'Connor.
Sorry, yes, Flannery O'Connor was very interested in Eastern Orthodox iconography. She saw one. She went up north somewhere, I think, to visit a friend or something, and she went to some Byzantine service, and they had apparently an image, which is probably what she based this image on his back off of, that she was kind of fascinated with, and she was kind of interested in that. But so, especially in like the Orthodox tradition, there's a very close connection to the icon and the person it signifies. Yeah. So by having this icon on his back, his wife looks at it and says, "I don't know who that is."
Right.
She's the one who's been professing to know Christ this whole time. She looks at him and says, I have no idea who this is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the one now who's trying to tell her who it is, and she won't believe him. But the minute he says that, she says blasphemy.
Yeah.
And then beats him out of the house.
And idolatry.
Yeah. And so she beats him out of the house, and the story ends with, I believe there was a tree in their front yard. He's left
Pecan
leaning.
tree.
Yeah. He's leaning under it, and he's just weeping uncontrollably.
Mm-hmm. And she's just looking out the window at him, being like, "Wow, he's such a baby."
Yeah. And I don't know, like, at the end, I mean, I didn't like him for most of the story, but at the end, I really feel for him.
Yeah.
Because you see, he's not a reputable person. He's a horrible person, yet he's been broken. He's actually, like, we talk about extending grace. He's had grace extended to him. His wife has had grace extended to her as well, probably previously and again now.
Yeah.
She thinks she's fine without it. She doesn't need what he's bringing home with him. He's been offered this grace, and it's completely humbled him and broken him.
Yeah.
But I think he accepts it at the end.
Yeah, me
Because
too.
I think he's seen it, and he's got the picture on his back now, but she rejects him, and he goes out and he's just weeping.
Yeah.
But you see his character changing at the end.
Mm-hmm.
He's pursuing whatever this is now, even though he doesn't fully realize what it is yet. I don't know. I can't even think of how to describe. Like, I feel for him at the end.
Yeah.
Because he's so broken. And I'm like, but I think he's in a better place than he was.
Mm-hmm. At the end, he feels more like your friend, or like, it almost feels like your brother was lost.
Yeah.
But came back.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it. It's like you want to help him.
Yeah.
Because before you're like, I don't want to be around you. You're a jerk. I'm kind of scared around you. I would probably see you and kind of go the other way because you might mug me or something.
Right.
But now you see him and you're just like, I want to take this guy and I want to take him home or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey,
take care of him, love him.
You need help and I'm here to give it to you. But you feel like at the end, he genuinely wants help. He doesn't know where to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever's offered to him, he will take it.
Yeah.
He's just been stripped completely bare to the bones, and he's ready to accept whatever will help him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the story. I think it's great.
It's really good. It's way better now that you told me all those things about it.
It helps that I had 2 classes on it.
Right, yeah. Still, that's really cool.
Yeah. So, I guess that's as much as Parker's back as we can get in the amount of time we have.
Yep.
If you have any other things that, I'm assuming that if you're listening, you've probably read it or going to read it.
Mm-hmm.
If you find anything we missed, point it out. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
I mean, we only have so much time here.
Yep.
If you've never read Flannery O'Connor before, check out some of our other stuff. It's pretty good.
Bo Show.
Good Country People, or Good Man's Hard to Find is also really good.
That's
and
one of the big ones.
Revelation's good too, and The River.
Yeah, I was going to say The River. The River's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of our stuff's pretty good.
Holy cow.
But be prepared for the fact that it can get kind of dark and gritty and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But just keep in the back of your mind, she's offering grace to the person. They're horrible people. She's going to offer grace, and they can accept it or they can decline it.
Yep.
And so she's kind of painting the world as she sees it to really be.
Yep.
Which is not a beautiful place.
It is not.
All the time. Without Jesus. So, I guess that brings us to the end of our time. As always, you can reach us through our email or Facebook or Instagram. There hopefully will be something up on the blog.
Mm-hmm. Are the email and everything linked to in the blog post?
They're within the blog post. They're also on Facebook and Instagram. You can find them.
Okay.
I made sure that they're linked in the bio.
So we
you
can just tell them where the
there.
blog is.
Yep.
Or we don't have to give them
You're
the
going to
email.
have to give the URL because I always forget it.
Right. Cave Escape. Is it the Cave Escape?
Let's just look it up.
I forgot it already. Cave Escape. Just look up the Cave Escape podcast. We're the only ones. There's no other Cave Escape podcast, and you'll find us.
I got it right here. It's thecaveescapeblog.blogspot.com.
Okay.
There we go. So you can go there and you can find us there. You can leave comments.
Our email's on there. You can email us with questions, suggestions for topics even. We would love that. We've been kind of struggling figuring out how to plan out topics, so we want suggestions.
Yes, so please feel free to comment, reach out, whatever. Share it with your friends if you liked it.
Yeah.
So I guess that brings us to the end of our time this week. As always, thank you for listening, and until next week, take care.